Good morning, good afternoon, and good day to everyone who has joined us today on Sky Connect. Thank you very much for your time and for making it to be part of this month's edition of AFRAA Sky Connect Dialogue. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today we have a packed schedule as always, and my guest will be the chairman of the AFRAA Executive Committee and Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Airways, Mr. Allan Kilavuka, and the Secretary General of the African Airlines Association, Mr. Abderahmane Berthe. Between the two of them, we would be reviewing the airline's performance, particularly in the recent past. We've just taken a step back to see how last year was for airlines on the continent. We would then look at what we should be focusing on as industry priorities or airline priorities for 2025 and beyond. And I would want to get from both the chairman of the executive committee and the secretary general their vision for African aviation going forward. So ladies and gentlemen, we are going to step back into last year, and from there we come and move forward into the future to see what aviation has to offer. And who else is better placed to take us through this journey, either than the chairman of the AFRAA Executive Committee and the Secretary General of AFRAA. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the discussion. As always, ladies and gentlemen, you would be invited to participate or you to tab of the box to put in your questions or comments, and at the appropriate time, I would review them with our guests on the show today. So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would start off our discussion by welcoming to this session, Mr. Allan Kilavuka. Sir, you're most welcome to Sky Connect.
Thank you very much, Rafa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I also want to welcome the Secretary General of AFRAA to the show, Good morning, Mr. Abderahmane Berthe. Mr. Abderahmane Berthe, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Raphael.
Good. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we get off. So I will start with the Secretary General of AFRAA. Just give us a flavor of airline performance in the year 2024. How did your airlines fare? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raphael. As we all know, the industry has been impacted by the COVID-19, and 2024 was very important for us because it has been the year of recovery, because we reached the level of traffic we had before the COVID-19. This is very important. And even some African airlines have went above the level of traffic we had before COVID. And we have seen also new opening of new routes. However, the profitability of our African airline remains very fragile. It's a concern regarding the economic sustainability of the industry. We have also seen in 2024 a slight improvement on connectivity, though connectivity remains a concern in Africa. The continent is not well connected. in a nutshell, that is what I can say about 2024.
Yeah, thank you very much, Secretary General. If I may now talk to our chairman. Chairman, you are the chief executive of an airline. The Secretary General is talking about connectivity not at the level we expect it to be. What is holding African airlines back from connecting the continent effectively?
Yeah. Again, thank you very much for inviting me into this discussion. First of all, I want to agree with the SG, the Secretary General, with regard to 2024 performance. We are back to pre-COVID levels now. We were back last 2023, and 2024 we continue that growth trajectory, of course, slowed down by COVID. Now, you asked me specifically about what plagues African airlines with regard to supporting connectivity.
That's right.
And to state very clearly that indeed, Africa is the least connected continent, despite the great need for connectivity, given the other infrastructure deficits that we have in the continent. And the fact that connectivity supports not just movement of people, which is important, but also supports growth and supports trade and investment across the continent. So we are, in a sense, sabotaging our own growth by being not as connected as we should. And of course, the policy framework within the African continent in the past and even currently does not effectively support connectivity. I know we talk about SATAM, which of course tries to solve that problem. But it is not just SATAM. There are many interventions that are needed from a policy perspective that will support connectivity. Not just supporting connectivity by giving rights to fly from one city to another pair, but also to reduce the cost of operation. Because operating in Africa is extremely expensive. So for African carriers to start operating in a new destination, it takes a lot more effort to start operating into those new destinations. And then on top of which, it takes even longer for that particular destination to be self-sustaining. So the investment needed to start a new destination is a lot higher comparatively than other continents. Then the propensity for African travelers to spend is very low, mainly because of the state of the economies in this continent, and also because aviation, at the moment at least, is not seen as a tool to enable trade, investment, and movement, free movement of people. But it is seen to be an elitist kind of sector. So incentives are not necessarily opened up for African carriers. Of course, I don't want just to pass the back to other agencies and governments. I also want to admit that, yes, indeed, also we as carriers have not been as efficient as we could be in order for us to improve connectivity, reduce operating costs, and therefore be able to open up routes. But there are many, many challenges that are completely outside our control as African carriers that are not faced when it comes to other areas outside this continent. So those are just some of the thoughts, Raphael, that I have. There are many more, but those are some of the glaring ones.
Yeah. So now you talk about the challenges and how these are impacting us. Notwithstanding that African airlines are making strides. Now the AU Vision 2063 clearly outlines the 3 pillars that are intended to actually open up Africa, make Africa trade better, and facilitate movements of people and goods. And these policies are the Single African Air Transport Market, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and the AU Protocol on Movement of People and Goods. Now, we've seen some traction, but it's not as we would expect. I would want to find out from the Secretary General, laudable programs like this, why is Africa not embracing them and make them work in the interest of connectivity and trade for the continent?
Thank you, Raphael, to remind us the AU free flagship project. For me, those are a framework to put in place to drive the development of air transport on the continent. However, we are seeing that their implementation is very, very slow because we have some challenges. For me, we really need to see decision makers prioritizing aviation and enforcing the recommendation to drive air transport development. And also, I want also to say that regarding the development of air transport and connectivity, the economies of our states is also something very important, because as you know, in Africa, the GDP per capita is very low. It's roughly 15% of the world average. And even less than 15 African states are above the average GDP per capita on the continent. And also we have a high rate of inflation, which is impacting the purchasing power of African citizens to buy tickets and travel. And also for me, we need to create a business. You know, if there is business, there will be an African industry growing. And the fact is also that talking about the African Continental Free Trade Area, we know that Africans are not trading enough among themselves. This is something also which has started to improve and which we really need to improve. And also, I want to talk about the high cost environment to do business for airlines in Africa. This is something also we need to work on. And of course, airlines need also to resolve any inefficiencies, internal inefficiencies they have, which can end up to poor performance and to high cost of travel.
Yeah, thanks, SG. But I, you know, just yesterday, I was in a meeting, and then the issue of single African air transport came up. And the discussion was that, no, it is the airlines who are actually blocking the implementation of SATAM. And I was shocked. So I found myself arguing against. I'm not too sure. Allan, what are your thoughts? Are you the ones who are actually blocking SATAM?
Well, let me tell you this. Maybe you should have asked the next question. The question is why? It is possible that we have certain airlines who have apprehensions about SATAM because any new change brings some threat. But you have to allay those fears and understand the question why. I think when we understand why, then address those concerns, I think it will be much easier. But we find that generally speaking, implementing any new progressive changes in Africa for whatever reasons. You see, we have 55 countries in Africa. Again, the size is big. How many languages are we talking about? How many jurisdictions influenced by different jurisdictions around the world? So there's a lot of influence both externally and internally Some of them are nationalistic, protective, that inform their pushback. So when you are implementing such a big and monumentous project as SATAM, the best way to do it is to do projects. And I think between us, AFRAA, and some of the airlines, we've said, why don't we, instead of trying to eat the whole elephant, do it in bits and pieces? You know, start with East Africa maybe, and then roll it out over time. So we have a goodwill ambassadors. We need to roll it out. Until we roll it out, those fears will still be there, because the assumption is the bigger airlines will take advantage of the smaller airlines who are still trying to develop. There's also this nationalistic protectionism that surround, maybe say, the smaller airlines, which they have fears. Those fears have to be allayed. We cannot wish them away. So those are some of the challenges. Now, like I said, it is not just SATAM, because you're picking up on SATAM, maybe because I'm here. But there are many other very important and key proposals, like the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, that goes hand in hand with growth of connectivity. We also have others that will help, for example, free movement of goods, free movement of people, the freeing up the visa access to markets. All those things that we have been talking about for a long time, including how do we work more collaboratively with each other. So if you work more collaboratively with each other among airlines, like has happened in other jurisdictions, then maybe it's part of solving the problem that some of the airlines have when it comes to SATAM. So those are some of my thoughts with regard to.
Okay. Thank you very much for those thoughts. In fact, I picked on SATAM because of this discussion that came up yesterday, and I found myself arguing that, look, SATAM is a commitment by the states, by our heads of states and by our states. And therefore, I do not see how an individual company or entity within the country would actually tend to want to block something that the whole state have committed to, you know. So that's why I'm picking on SATAM, because I thought SATAM is bigger than an airline, and an airline cannot actually, airline probably might try to influence, but if the country is determined, if the government is determined, they should go ahead and implement SATAM irrespective of what the airline's position might be. That was the point I was trying to drive at. But let's move on. You touched on something that is actually my next point. I want us to look at airline cooperation and collaboration. You know, connectivity the world over is also based on how well airlines work together and how they integrate their networks. This doesn't seem to be happening on Africa. And I know, Allan, you have been championing airline collaboration for some time now. What progress have we made, and how are we getting there?
Rafael, I'm assuming that you're directing that to me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I am very, very passionate about this subject. I can talk about it for months, but I only have a few minutes. So let me just frame the problem here, which I have done many times over. But here's the problem. The problem is we need viable, formidable airlines in Africa. Why? Because we want to increase connectivity. We want them to be more viable, to be more sustainable. In their current state, in the current state of many African airlines, they are completely subscale. They cannot succeed. They are not sustainable. They might survive for a few years, but they'll eventually die. Because in aviation, scale is important. Scale is important because it reduces your cost of operation, and it increases your capacity to have resources, not just human resources, financial resources as well. You can have a better bargaining power and therefore overall reduce your cost of operation. So in their current state, most African airlines, a majority of African airlines cannot survive in the long haul and not sustainable. So what is the solution? The solution is we have two ways of going about this. pumping a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars, to expand all these airlines to a size that will be big enough, will be scaled enough for them to be able to operate effectively. But there is a problem. If you do that, you'll overheat, because you'll have all of a sudden a lot of capacity. All of a sudden you'll need a lot of expertise, and in fact, you'll increase the cost of operation. So that is one track. The other track is to have a collaboration, better working relationship among African carriers, so you can increase their scale without necessarily increasing their cost. And that is where I am very passionate about. How can we work together so that we can increase our scale of operation collaboratively, and then reduce our cost of production? Again, this is nothing that is new. It has happened all over the world. In fact, SG is even an expert on this one, because a few years ago in West Africa, or in Central and West Africa, they had a fantastic airline, which of course was sabotaged by politics, but fantastic airline, which was working collaboratively among states. In East Africa here, we are the East African Airways. So it is not novel, it's not new. It has been done before, maybe not in a good way, but that same concept of coming together collaboratively has been implemented now in Europe, North America, and other places very, very effectively. And now you can see how sustainable and formidable those airlines are. So if we continue in the way we are going, by continue to fragment this sector, we will continue being subscale, we will continue being very expensive, very inefficient, and eventually, like I said, it's not sustainable, because you can only go on for so long.
Yeah,
I think this is a passionate topic for me, but
yeah,
I think we stop it there.
I know you're very passionate about it, but SG, I'm told I'm sure you also have your thoughts on this. You lead the Airline Association, and you have been driving the need for collaboration, for cooperation, for doing things together, because that is basically the spirit of the industry. Why are we not seeing the results we expect?
Thank you. The chairman has said all of it regarding cooperation, consolidation. In fact, we are in a very fragmented airline industry in Africa. We have 54 states. And if you look at it, the number of states willing to have their national carrier with less than 5 aircraft, this really is not viable. And also we are seeing a very low level of cooperation between airlines, because there is a fear between airlines in terms of cooperation. And for me, you can cooperate and still compete, in fact. So that's the reason, Raphael, you know very well, at AFRAA, we are trying to promote the cooperation among our African airlines. We have a route network and cargo coordination committee. And under this committee, you know, I've been a CEO before I joined AFRAA as Secretary General. Through this coordination committee, I remember my airline signed a lot of interline and codeshare agreements with other airlines, including Kenya Airways at that time, and Ethiopian Airlines as well. So it's really possible. We really need to cooperate more, and even to go toward consolidation. I know my chairman is passionate about it, and he has passed the passion to myself as well. So for me, consolidation, we know the benefits. It enhances the purchasing power of airlines. And also, we talked about connectivity. When you consolidate, you can build a consistent network for the benefit of intra-African connectivity. And also something important, if you look at the future growth of air transport in Africa, developing skills and training will be very important in the future. So when you consolidate, it's more easy to train people, to share resources. And also, you know, safety is constantly a priority for us. When you'll have the traffic growing, number of flights, aircraft on the continent growing, consolidation may be a good way to keep the level of safety we have.
So, Raphael, if I may, please just allow me to say final words on this one.
Please do.
So that it hopefully helps to simplify. So when we talk about collaboration, indeed, my biggest view is, yes, we can do a lot of code sharing and interlines and all those things, but we move ever more progressively from there to deeper cooperation, which is now talking about joint ventures and eventually consolidations. Again, like I said, we don't even have to think very deeply into it. It needs political goodwill. It needs goodwill from other people. But then you have a situation where in Europe, every single day when you wake up, you see them consolidating even more. In Africa, you wake up every single day, you see them fragmenting even more. So we are going the opposite direction. While we all know that if there is any continent that needs to consolidate, it is Africa. So I just wanted to conclude that.
Yeah, thank you for that additional input. Now, I just want to, you both talked about the fact that our airlines are vulnerable, they are small, and we're not working together. So I presume that is actually what is informing the lack of profitability among our operations. But I just want us to focus a bit on how we can ensure that the African airlines are sustainable. Because it's one thing, as small as we are, fragmented as we are, we all want to survive. How can we navigate the complexities and be sustainable going into the future so that we don't keep losing them and creating them and losing more? What should we be doing? Allan.
Raphael, I hope I understand your question correctly. Basically, the question, let me repeat it, is how can airlines in Africa be more sustainable? What kind of programs
do we need?
We can implement to be more sustainable?
That's right.
And to answer that question, you asked the question, how does an airline become sustainable?
Yes.
Is the question.
Yes.
Okay. So I would say that there are 4 key things that are needed for any airline, whether in Africa or any other place, to be sustainable. First is creating efficiencies within the airline. How do you continue to increase the efficiencies within the airline so that they can operate efficiently, both internally and externally? An efficient airline meaning that the airline is operating on schedule, that it has its maintenance on point, and so on and so forth. Second is growth. Like an airline has to grow. And by growth, we are talking about both growth capacity and frequencies, and therefore points, destinations. Without growth, if an airline is not growing, it is dying, right? So it needs to grow its product offering, it needs to grow, improve its efficiency, and so on and so forth. The third one is cost. Because we are a very low margin business, we have to make sure that we are containing costs. Costs are reasonable. They are sustained at the levels that, always continuously looking at how do you bring down the cost. And then lastly, is to see how you can improve the skill of staff and the status of the airline to improve and enhance airline safety, because safety is our license to operate. Without safe airlines, then we cannot operate. In fact, I will start with that last point.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and as you can maybe frame it in a better way, if you look at safety statistics, unfortunately, Africa is ranked highest in terms of unsafety and lowest in terms of safety. If you look at the number of accidents and so on and so forth, incidences and safety incidences, unfortunately, we are not ranked very well. So we have got to solve that problem. And the best way, and maybe the easiest way to solve that problem, is to learn from each other. Because on the one hand, we have airlines that are struggling in this area, but on the other, we also have best practices. And I will not hesitate to mention one airline from Kenya Airways, which again, we can offer our expertise and support to other airlines, to support their safety culture. Secondly, is going back to the top, is we're talking about growth. Growth, again, we already talked about consolidation. If you cannot grow internally, at least let's consolidate, and then we can grow together. Efficiency. Efficiency is best ways of operating. We also can learn from each other. I'll give an example of the free routing that we are doing from an AFRAA point of view. We as Kenya Airways and I think Ethiopian, Rwanda Air, and I think Air or Morocco have done this, helping the airline to improve its efficiency, to fly efficiently. Not only will it reduce cost, it also helps you to be within the time schedules. And then lastly, we talked about cost, looking at every dollar to make sure that because we're operating in a high cost environment, we are doing whatever is within our control, the controllable cost, to bring down the cost of operation. Now, we don't operate, Raphael, in a vacuum. We obviously also operate, with other people who are around us. So we need to make sure that the policy framework is also supportive of us. So we continue to lobby and advocate. The ecosystem around our airlines, the airports, and other service providers also helps the airline to succeed.
Thank you so much for those very important 4 key points for sustainability. I think this is sustainability 101 you have just given us. So SG, do you have any additional input on how we can make our airlines more sustainable?
Thank you, Raphael. When we talk about here sustainability, we are talking about economic sustainability, right?
That's right. We refer to economic sustainability.
I want to approach it in 3 areas. For me, the first area of effort is internal to airlines. It's very important for airlines to have a very strong business case. Sometimes it's not the case. And Allan has talked about it. It's also important to bring efficiency in our operation, to leave any inefficiencies internally. And also, for me, customer experience is very important because at the end of the day, we are selling a product to customers. And sometimes in Africa, the customer service is not at the top level. So we need also internally to think about it. And of course, as Allan has said, safety is on top, very important. That's the reason we started the Safety and Operation Summit, the first edition last year. We have the second this year. The second area for me is external. It is important and for this area, we really need to work with all stakeholders and decision makers to improve the operation environment, the cost environment for airlines, very important. And the last area is, as African Airlines, anything we can do together to be stronger. I mean, joint project to reduce costs or to increase revenues. The chairman talked about the through route airspace, which is a very important project. It will reduce costs for airline and also reduce the CO2 emissions on the continent. I want also to talk about other projects like the joint fuel procurement project we have. And of course, we have other projects coming in next year to improve the sustainability of our member airlines.
Okay, good. So AFRAA is doing quite a bit to also contribute towards the sustainability and you if they adopt the right measures and put in place the right structures that will get them to where they want to be. Now, allow me to move to a different subject. So we've reviewed what exists today. Let us look at what we should be expecting this year. The projections are that traffic will continue to grow and Africa will have its fair share of this growth. But so what, in your view, SG, are the priorities that AFRAA has for African airlines in 2025?
Thank you. 2025 is promising. We expect a traffic growth for African airlines from 98 million passengers to 113 million. This is more than 18% growth, which is very important. For 2025, we expect the fuel prices to be lower. As you know, fuel is a big component of airlines' operation cost. So having fuel costs lower will be good also for the business. And all international institutions are projecting economy growth rates in 2025 and 2026. This also will be good to grow the transportation business. For 2025, we have 4 priorities. The first one is safety. I'll not come back on it. I talked about it already. We really want also to improve intra-Africa connectivity and routes development. We have some projects for this with other stakeholders, and we will continue working on it. The third one is the sustainability of airlines, focusing on economic sustainability and also tackling the area of social and environment sustainability, which is becoming important for us because it can, at the end of the day, impact our airline's performance because of some international decisions regarding the implementation of SAF in our operations. And the last priority for us, you know, we have been working on a 5-year strategic plan, which will end this year. And we are starting to work on the next strategic plan, which will be running 2026-2030. We have started to formulate the actions for the next strategic plan. We will focus on safety and security as constantly. We'll focus on collaboration with other stakeholders for sustainable air transport. We will focus on developing the next generation of aviation professionals because we really need to develop skills and competencies on the continent. We will continue to provide more consultancy services at AFRAA for the benefits of our member airlines. And also we will enhance our data and statistics, and also focus on aviation intelligence, because, you know, artificial intelligence will pave the way for the future of our industry. So in the next strategic plan, we will see how to start thinking about it, to bring artificial intelligence in our member airlines operation on the continent. So that is what I can say for 2025 and the next 5 years for our strategic plan.
Interesting. A lot of loaded activities planned for the future going forward. Now, if I may, Chairman, you know, I was reading the recent IATA statistics and the forecast, which says that if the status quo remains, Africa might only double its air traffic control. In other words, we're currently doing about 2%. We probably might be moving to about 4% in 2043. But in 2043, assuming nothing changes, we keep going the pace at which we are going, we keep disrupting ourselves, we keep not working together. Now, this is a long time. What should we be doing to actually achieve a better contribution to global connectivity and global traffic sooner?
Okay. Thank you, Raphael. You were breaking up a little bit, but I think I got the gist of your question. So yes, I think the traffic is projected to double by, you said, 2043.
43, yeah.
Completely correct. You know, at 2% of global air traffic, even doubling is not good enough. And like you said, it's taking a long time. You know, some statistics say we are growing at 6%, and one of the highest. I think Asia probably beating us. But even then, not good enough, to your point. So then what do we do? Of course, how to respond is to look at the challenges. What are the challenges that are plaguing us to stop us from growing at double digit without necessarily taking care so that we have a responsible growth that does not overheat, so that, you know, we invest more than we can actually consume. So address the challenges. I believe that if you look at it externally, it really needs to look some policy framework. And by the way, one of the things I believe that is plaguing our growth is where have we placed aviation in the entire GDP spectrum? What do you consider aviation's role to be? If you look at where aviation is thriving around the world, if you pick specific countries where generally the aviation sector is doing extremely well, you will find that there is a complete direct correlation between economic growth and a thriving aviation sector. Why? Because they have fashioned the aviation sector, placed it right in the center of the economic policies, social and economic policy. They have invested enough in the supporting infrastructure that supports aviation, that supports airlines and other service providers. And one of the problems that we're having in Africa is that we have not made that decision yet. And those countries in Africa, and I think you can name them, who have decided that aviation is important enough for it to be at the center of economic development, they are reaping the benefits when it comes to economic development. And the opposite can be said to be true.
Yeah.
So from a policy perspective, the AU should walk the talk and place aviation right in the center of economic development. And once you do that, then you can invest more. you can reduce the cost of financing. You know, as we all know, those ones who operate airlines and related, you know, we pay premiums when it comes to fleet ownership, when it comes to borrowing for expansion. We pay premiums, right? So how should we de-risk this business so that we can pay like other people do around the world, and then therefore invest in more and be sustainable? So the point I am making is this, is that for us to grow faster, we need to place aviation in its rightful place. Aviation, as Ayata says, is the biggest catalyst for economic development, bigger than many others, bigger than agriculture actually, because it will help create employment and also help from a logistic point of view. And of course, the continent is a large continent, so it does need aviation. So policy needs to support action. Right now, policy does not support action. Even if we wanted to, it becomes extremely difficult. And then, of course, I will bring back my pet subject, which is consolidation. Consolidation. Yeah. Once that happens, if we do those two things together, we can grow much, much faster. We can grow much faster inorganically than we can grow organically, because organically needs a lot of financing, which we don't have, and again, which you're paying a premium for. So, I mean, there are many other small things, but I think those are the big rocks.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. SG, now, if we look at, we've got these priorities rolled out or prepared to be rolled out. We looking positively at the future, and we're doing everything to ensure that we attain the level of success that we need for the airlines on the continent. My question to you is, what are the anticipated showstoppers? In other words, what are the challenges that you anticipate in the next couple of years that could actually impact achievement of these laudable priorities, and how are we going to work around them? I'll ask both of you the same question. I guess your thoughts.
Thank you, Raphael. I want to, before I answer this question, to react to what you said before. Huh?
Yes.
The doubling of the market share of African air transport from 2% to 4% by 2043. This is 20 years' time.
Yes.
So that is not good to hear, because because we represent 18% of the world population.
Yeah.
So we should do better, and I hope we'll do better.
Yeah.
So for me, the factors impacting, in fact, the development of air transport in Africa, to be honest, for me, we need to see more collaboration among the stakeholders across the aviation industry. However, that is not enough. You know, we have been attending many conferences, making a lot of recommendations, talking to ourselves. So what is missing in the puzzle for me is to see states taking ownership of the decision-making process to pave the way for African air transport development. This will be key for the future of our air transport industry.
Yeah, I perfectly agree with you. But you see, earlier on, we had a discussion, and I said the accusation is that it is the airlines who are stopping this. So we can go on and on this, but that's a discussion for another day. So my question now, what are the showstoppers? What are the roadblocks that you anticipate?
So the roadblocks I am anticipating, you mean for the growth of our industry, right?
Yes.
Is, you know, it's complex. As we said before, we need to have an African economy driving the development of our economies, and therefore also transportation and air transport as well. For me, this is very important. And also, it's very important, as I said before, to see our airlines well prepared to embrace this all the opportunities on the table to grow and to improve connectivity on the continent.
Okay.
So for me, we need to resolve the issue of cost environment, taxes and charges. And in this, I want here to commend the decision of the head of state of the ECOWAS region. They have decided to cut taxes on the ECOWAS region. They directed experts and ministers to come with recommendation for the head of states. You attended, Rafael, the meeting in Lomé in November. And in December, during the head of state summit, they have decided to cut taxes in the region starting 1st January 2026. For me, this is a milestone, and I want to see the same thing in other regions to promote the development of air transport.
Okay.
Rafael, if I may.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, I just piggyback on what SG has said. Let me start with that last point he raised on taxes. So, for example, I mean, I'm really happy to hear about what ECOWAS heads of states have done. I think, to me, it is actually a no-brainer. We could go the next level and do the same for SADC. Like I said, maybe it is difficult to implement this thing across Africa, but let's do it regionally then. Let's go to East African Community, for instance. East African Community and domesticate the travel. Because in any case, there's no visa requirement in any of those countries. So why are we charging the airport passenger services as if I'm flying into Europe? Why don't we domesticate it? And that will increase the traffic. By that very act, simple act of domesticating travel, it will increase traffic, and in fact, it will increase revenue, in my estimation. So I think this is an important one.
Great.
That we want to
thank you so much. Allow me at this point, we're running very late now, and we still have certain things to capture. But let me just go to our questions, and in your response, if you can be as brief and as straight. Francis Malinga, and he says it is common knowledge that every new route starts with losses. How can African Airlines strategically tackle this problem to ensure we expand our route networks? I don't know, Allan, you want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, you know, yes, it's true. I mean, the route startups typically in Africa, they take long. Now on average, at least 3 to 5 years to be formidable. Some take shorter. Strategically, we've talked about policy framework, reducing costs, particularly taxes. That will help reduce cost and it will stimulate travel. Yeah. So those are some of the two key things. And of course, if you improve your efficiency, if your schedules are on time, it will encourage traffic from one place to another.
Yeah.
From a policy framework, also free up, visas so that people can move much faster.
Great, thank you. If you can take this question from Tillman Gabriel. He says, Allan is right. Eat elephants in small pieces, but who is coordinating the bigger picture with all the nationalistic interests? That is with regards to the Africa open market access. Who is coordinating the bigger picture? And he says, for instance, EU took about 50 years to be where they are. Wouldn't Africa need such time as well? Let's see.
For the liberalization, the single African air transport market, we have an executing agency, which is the African Civil Aviation Commission. And of course, we support and we work with AFCAC. They have done a good job since 3 years. and we have seen some improvement. We will continue for this project of SATAM. You know, as AFRAA, our mandate is to see our members stronger, and that is the reason we have a strategic plan. We have some actions also for the benefit of our member airlines, and we will continue to do so. Coming back to liberalization, it's not something which will happen from night to today. It will take some time, but it has taken time in other regions. However, in Africa, it's taking long time, and we really want to speed up the pace of its implementation. However, there are concerns, and we also need to listen to those concerns, and to try to respond to mitigate these concerns if we want really to bring everyone on board.
Okay, thank you. Now, Emerson Lubrano wants to know, what role is public-private partnerships playing in fostering cooperation among airlines, governments, and other stakeholders? Allan, you know what is the role of, is there a role for public-private partnerships?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, most of this, for example, in aviation, a lot of the infrastructure is actually public, but funding comes from private. So it goes without saying, any successful implementation of big projects, particularly when it comes to growth, PPPs are successful. So I advocate for those. So the role is central. In places where successful PPPs have been implemented, of course, you've seen great success. And in areas where it's purely private, public, it needs a lot of goodwill from government. So you need private capital and expertise and rigor, discipline, to be injected into public. Public have the facilities that support this. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, great. Thank you. But whilst at that, can you just take on this other one from Nicholas Molimira? He says, how can African Airlines enhance revenue generation beyond the passenger service revenues?
Yeah, I mean, the diversification. You know, one of the biggest revenue sources for an airline like Delta is in their loyalty program. Extremely successful. So, you know, then of course there is all other adjacent businesses, catering, for example. I keep saying that Kenya Airways is the biggest restaurant in Eastern Central Africa. So we serve a lot of meals. So we can do that catering business, self-catering. I know South Africa Airways have also their catering unit. There's MRO. In fact, MRO is a huge opportunity because today a lot of European carriers are going to China. A lot of American carriers use China, either engine shops and so on. And we know with this golden age that is coming up in America, maybe this is an opportunity for us as well to market ourselves. So there are many opportunities. And in fact, African Airlines should take this very seriously.
Okay, thank you. And there's one more question for you, Chairman, from Chinelo Obogo. He says, what is your assessment of Nigerian Airlines collaborations? How is Kenya Airways? How does Kenya Airways intend collaborating with Nigerian Airways? Do you have any plans for that?
Yeah. So yeah, let me just very briefly, I'll tell you what, you know, our initial thought as Kenya Airways is in coming up with what we were calling the Pan-African Airline Group, was to set up several hubs within Africa, one which is in East Africa, one in South Africa, and another in West Africa. And so that discussion, with Nigerian Airlines, Ghanaian Airlines, and so on and so forth, to have this collaboration has started. It is very difficult, first of all, to sell this concept because it's considered a new concept, but very open to have that discussion. I think many of the African carriers are very internally focused. They look internally as opposed to externally because the threat is not internal, it's external. And so, yes, we are quite open to discuss with any carrier, actually. It's not a closed shop.
Thank you for that. And finally, SG, can you take this one from Libin Chako? How far is cargo an important part of the agenda for economic sustainability and airline profitability?
Thank you. In fact, cargo is another opportunity for business for our African airlines. We have seen during the COVID that some of our member airlines survived because of cargo. We also know that with the African Continental Free Trade Area, we expect to have more cargo business on the continent, and also e-commerce. However, we need to strengthen the regulatory aspect of cargo operations on the continent. For sure, for the future of our industry, cargo will be fully part of our airlines business. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now our time is up. Unfortunately, we've not been able to go through all the questions. There were a number of other questions that were pending, but my apologies, I cannot take all of that. We also have some comments, including one from our good friend Tom Cook. We appreciate all those comments, but let me just conclude by asking my guest to give me in a few words, in less than a minute, what their key message for all of us at this session are, starting with the Secretary General of AFRAA.
For me, I will just talk about the need for collaboration among all stakeholders, cooperation between African airlines and decision makers taking ownership to implement the measures to develop air transport on the continent.
Thank you very much. Chairman, your final thought for us as you lead AFRAA in 2025. What are your thoughts that you're leaving with us?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And, very good discussions, very good questions. I think for me is to reiterate what I've already said. First is African aviation in Africa is extremely critical for economic development. It has not been given its rightful share, its rightful place in playing that role, which it can. And so I believe the AU in particular and the African governments should place aviation in its rightful place, invest in the infrastructure in those places, and then watch the benefits that will come out of this in the years to come. And then again, just repeat what the SG has said. We as African carriers need to work together. As chairman of AFRAA, I will be championing consolidation throughout my tenure. I will also be championing the reduction of costs in the African carriers and the sustainability of African carriers. So those would be my key agendas. Thank you very much, Rafa.
Well, on that high note, ladies and gentlemen, this is all that time will allow us. On behalf of AFRAA, I want to thank our guest, the chairman of the AFRAA Executive Committee, Mr. Allan Kilavuka, and the Secretary General of the African Airlines Association, Mr. Abderahmane Berthe. And to all of you who found time to join us for this session, we thank you very much for your time and your participation. particularly for those who asked questions and who made comments on the discussions. We really appreciate. My apologies for not being able to read out all your comments and questions. And we hope next time we would have time to be able to take them on. Until next month, first Wednesday of March, when we have another session like this, I would want to thank all of you and wish you a very nice and successful day and the rest of the week. Bye-bye from us. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.